My path is of long-term due to age. I started in the late 1980s to work after graduating here in agriculture and working in a cooperative on a sheep farm. I was in charge of agriculture of proletarian democracy, where there I matured together several people who played an important role in the choice of organic as a model sustainable agriculture. Many people boast that they are experts in agroecology, not knowing that agroecology is a framework within which organic farming and biodynamic agriculture are the tools for putting into practice agroecological principles, which both biodynamic and organic lacks the obligatory agroforestry and that of the social commitment, which, however, for many people is consequent to the choice to stay within this model. From this choice, I participated in the birth of the Italian organic movement in the group that was called Cose Biologico. They were the regional coordinations of all consumer groups, of technicians, of producer associations that were working in organic, who got together to write the production specifications and establish the control rules. Of course, these were the tool for operating until the CE regulation came into force in 1992. From that organic was born IAP, the Italian Association for Organic Agriculture, which grouped regionally representation of organic producers, consumers, and technicians, has become a federal structure that is based on regional structures that make it up. I have always worked with and for IAP. Then in 2005, when I ceased to be president of IAP, I was commissioned to build the Italian Foundation for Research in Organic and Biodynamic Agriculture. A promoting group was made. Then in 2007, FIRAB was founded. During my membership in IAP, we started reasoning with a number of people about how to include organic in our children's cafeterias. And the next step was, if it's good for the children, why don't we eat it ourselves? The difficulties were just that Umbria was very rich. It was easy to refer wine, oil, grains, flowers, and whatever else. Tobacco practically slaughtered all the areas devoted to horticulture. We started as an association with a campaign called Godo, which would be organized groups of questions offered, which is slightly different from a GAS. We wanted to make a model that is a model of associational activity in the sense that the group purchasing is mediated by the organization of the association, that is, members, producers, and consumer members exchange products. The role of the association is to organize the logistics, the orders, even supporting in the early periods was very, very important. The producers to steer them toward choices that were not in their minds. If we go and look here at the area of organic vegetables that Umbria had for us 20 years ago, we are very close to zero because we were talking about the family garden. And then the work that the association has done is to say if you already make 500 meters of vegetable garden for your house, let's try to make 1,000 and see how it goes. And then 2,000, I mean, there are companies that have started having Godo as their only customer. And now they stand at significant vegetable areas. And so in the early years, the role of the association was to continue to explain why, while on the counter of the large-scale retail greengrocers already had everything, zucchini, eggplant, and peppers, why in Umbria this was not possible, or the unattractiveness of the products. So telling that the person who was producing it was a farmer who was experimenting with us and therefore didn't had all the technical knowledge to do that. And that led to a growth not inconsiderable, always trying to emphasize the fact that this was an association project. This is not what we have here in San Marino. It is not a point of sale. It is the point of exchange between producers and consumers. And so alongside this, there were many projects that were about precisely the knowledge of organic up to doing small courses family horticulture, proposing millet in the school canteen, where they also propose how to cook it, how to prepare it, how to make it appealing, because then the children have their own taste. And so we did this by working in schools, especially early childhood with children, by making the garden, everything that was green that previously proposed was crap. It was harvested in the garden and brought to the cook and eaten was outstanding. We want precisely that people appreciate seasonality and appreciate territoriality by putting in with their purchase support for the development of organic farming in Umbria. We have had an increase of families. It has come up to 250 buying families and a turnover that has exceeded in some years 240,000 euros. We have a management system as all buying groups have today. It is called the numbers of the short supply chain. It is an opuscule where precisely are highlighted the first years in which products were growing, which products were most popular. The other special feature of this group is what we call the right price. The problem in Italian agriculture, but also in organic agriculture, is the non-recognition of the right price. When a primary good is the subject of financial speculation, it is difficult to think that it has the right price for those who produce it. Currently, prices are ridiculous enough to call into question whether or not to sow. Then what we do is gather the producers twice a year to establish, at least on fruit and vegetables, what is the price at which they think it is fair to sell the product. On this decision of the producer, the association makes a markup 20% on the dry product and 30% on fresh, which is the basis for amortizing the costs of rent, basic services, system, people preparing and making. That said, the COVID and the war have fundamentally changed relationships, pushed people apart, creating a situation where these principles that I have described to you now have been partly bypassed. And so the buyer is getting closer and closer to a store buyer. Let's say there has been a loss of this common feeling in the sense that the buyer is part of a project on a par with the maker and seller. So much so that in times of production crisis climate, it becomes difficult to procure. We recently convened producers saying, reluctantly, I tell you that the Godot closes, in the sense that we have fulfilled our association mission. We have promoted organic. We have created companies that can stand in the market on their own because they have their own group. After which the fact that we lose the value of what has been built together, this mechanism was also innovative with respect to price choice, with respect to organization, with respect to distribution. Go organic. For the distribution of products in the Menze, the next step is to enter the corporate welfare. And so our idea is to include the products of our associates as one of the benefits that employees, workers can request from the business owner. You go through accredited platforms because then the platform guarantees the tax relief, since it is a platform recognized by the ministry. And therefore, currently, these conditions that I am telling you about, those of the exponential increase of buying groups, of so many contingencies. Even the problem is that people are frightened by these events of war. And we have found that those who used to buy 10 now buy 5. Those who used to buy 5 buy 2. Those who used to buy 2 no longer buy. All with different valid reasons, with the understanding that price choice mechanism, especially in the last 2 years, if we go and compare the price of our price lists with organic in large-scale retail, which unfortunately, and I emphasize unfortunately today, controls 65% of the organic market and is killing it, we stay largely under that price, and in very many cases competitive with conventional. The reason of the move away is not organic, which is crime and too expensive. That is not the mechanism. the mechanism, maybe you have to open a reasoning of renewal and remotivation. And we have projects that link the buying group to the activity. The last and most important one is social farming. We have a project called the Traveling Experiential School of Social Bioagriculture. It is called a school because we bring people who have problems of social or even mental fragility to farms to learn how to do organic farming, hence the name school. We bring to different farms at the times of the work from here itinerant to work directly together with the operators and therefore experiential. This means that some of the products that are brought here to Godo can have the added value of social farming. This is another of the added values that we want to include in our buying group, that precisely we call it Godo, an organized group of supply and demand. The supply is passed on to those who have in the field producers, and the demand is based on the acceptance of this proposal.
Okay, Vincenzo, thank you. You have already answered many of the questions we wanted to ask. To clarify, I would say that you had a value-based objective linked to economic aspects, educational aspects, and aspects of culture creation, and therefore you succeeded. Now, you have already told about the developments, I think, about social farming rather than deliveries, rather than the fair price talk. So you have developed several aspects and several future avenues as well. And we also understood that, you explained it well, that there is a change in consumption, a change in attitudes also. Because you talked not only about the fact that we consume less, but that you do less community, you do less exchange, associations. So there is a spillover, an impact of contemporaneity on the activities that you do quite important. Just with respect to this, we were a little bit interested in understanding, in your opinion, what are the skills today that are fundamental to train and manage a GAS? Because we also have to think about to the creation of someone who may have intend to create a GAS from your experiences, from your expertise. What is essential in terms of skills?
The buying group currently, there are very structured purchasing groups. These are mainly in the north and northeast, which have dedicated people who maybe are people who have interest in this, who have a coordinating action that is critical. Maybe they have taken advantage of the fact that some producers from outside the area have gone up to present products to have some tasting evenings of explaining what they do, because they do that by, for example, following and getting to know the companies. I realize that periodically these organize expeditions to buying groups, almost always from the north or even in outside of Italy, which means that there is someone who is a contact person who knows what you produce, how much you produce, and makes you the terms of sale and makes the order for you. Because then after the purchase now, there are many who have small platforms where the member of the buying group writes down what they need and what they want to buy. So the skills are organizational skills, in my opinion, the main ones to form a buying group. Then on the flip side, there is already a predisposition on the part of many companies to provide the buying group. And so it already has its own logistics in the sense that those who is accustomed to selling buying groups, there is already a carrier with prices predetermined, with subscriptions, and therefore already knows how to tell you that the delivery has a minimum and a maximum in weight from when you place the order to when it arrives to you. There are these times that is, many of the things are already standardized and decided by who sells to you. In other situations, precisely, let's say, with more collective management, there is really the choice to divide the relationships. In the 2004, we launched what is called US as the National IAB, the Organic Chest. Basically, within a project, we had launched this idea of seasonal vegetables and fruits, 5 or 10 kilos that you would order blindly in the sense that I wouldn't tell you what was in it. What's in the field I would send to you. And then when they would phone the headquarters, they would say, but how can I have this product? And the answer was, but you have 3 friends near to where you live. You have a garage. And so let's have a meeting and organize that we build a delivery point where companies come and give you the famous chest.
Organizational skills, planning skills, and across-the-board relationship skills, the ability to get in touch, to disseminate, to propose. I don't want to position it on this type of activity, but outreach and relationship definitely do.
And then it is minimally knowledgeable about organic. If your buying group is a local buying group that reasons on a territoriality limited, you need to know when they have the product, what product they have, whether you can then put in new products, because the mechanism that is triggered is to ask for more. One thing that always infuriates me is that ultimately feds dictate the production plan. However, precisely this mechanism is also a mechanism to grow, that if you don't have a relational capacity and strength, can also be caught in the maelstrom.
You are clearly telling us that the values that lead to the use of a gas and the use of biologics must be maintained, safeguarded against market dynamics that sneak in where there is fashion or market attitude or trend. First, you told us about how the idea of mass, school, families came about. Do you have an idea with respect to the impact that gas can have on a family's life, on a family's economy? Have you told us anything yet?
Definitely, just on the fresh, the direct sale allows you to have cheaper prices than large retailers. If you go on grains or legumes, the big retailers who buy all over the world is unbeatable, because lentils at less than 4 euros per kilo, 8 euros per kilo, 7. Here you can get them. You find lentils there even at rock bottom prices, as well as oil or other productions where you can't get off if you've harvested it. If you haven't bought it from Greece, there is also more. However, I want to say, it's a choice also of life and belief, in the sense that if one is convinced that by buying organic, he can also help not only to those who sold him the product, but more importantly to the environment, it is probably a choice that is motivated differently. If it is to be an economic choice, it should be made wisely. I always say that organic farming should say that it is able to make products that are healthy and good for those who eat them and for the environment in which they are made.
In your opinion, have management mistakes been made? Can we prevent mistakes in the management of a gas from your experience or from your view of this world?
If I had known, I would have prevented them. However, those who build a solidarity buying group, I think the most serious work is to get to know the companies and relate directly also, because then there are many companies that look splendid, but then they are less splendid than they appear.
We are already at the advice. Get to know the companies that supply the products, size activities versus management capacity, production capacity. We had a couple of other curiosities. So you told us about ERPs and platforms to manage orders. Do you use any other tools? Do you have any other useful tools that we can disseminate so as to make it easier for those who want to activate a gas?
But let's say that mechanism is the simplest, in the sense that when one asks you how to access it, tells him, look, access the platform, you have no obligation. You see the price list. If you are interested, you order it. If you are not interested, you don't pay duty. The thing that is particular as far as we are concerned is that being an association, those who sell and those who buy are members.
So there is an association, a membership, and a platform.
Then, after the communication that goes through the launch of the list, also allows for other communications. And then also a newsletter, one thing to tell what's going on.
Definitely this kind of activity through the newsletter, through also communication activities, we reconfirm what you were saying at the beginning, are also an opportunity to give fair information and allow people to make informed choices. What is the future, in your opinion, of the GAS experience, and some advice for those who would like to establish it?
The buying group will grow mainly because of the organization of the small and medium-sized companies that, if they organize on their own, will perhaps have their hours counted. If they organize together, and I say this because it is essential to know together with the others that I can complete the offer. Because carrots, I can't do them because there is a clay soil that I get 2 centimeters. If another company in the area near the lake, there is sandy soil, maybe can put this production. Therefore also the organization of production, and therefore knowing that everybody does everything, however having certain references that for a certain amount guarantee the production.
So it comes back to the idea of responsibility, common value, community, organization.
Especially of the organization.
For the social farming talk, do you have a site? Do you have materials?
Lots of materials can be found on the National Association called Social Bioagriculture.
Thank you.